Something unusual is happening, and most people are either missing it or pretending it isn't real. Online, you see women posting the same question in different outfits. Where did all the good men go? You see threads, podcasts, and viral clips diagnosing men like a malfunctioning product. You see endless takes about men being emotionally unavailable, afraid of commitment, intimidated, broken, lost. But offline, a different story is unfolding. A lot of men aren't spiraling. They aren't panicking. They aren't begging to be chosen. They're quietly going about their lives. They're cooking their meals exactly the way they like them. They're finishing projects they've been delaying for years. They're training, reading, building, working, sleeping better. They're spending time with friends without negotiating it like a political agreement. They're sitting in their own living rooms in peace, not bracing for the next correction, complaint, or emotional audit. And that's what's confusing people, because the culture had a script for men. The assumption was if you take relationships away, men collapse. If men don't have a woman, they'll become desperate. They'll chase harder. They'll lower their standards. They'll accept whatever deal is offered. That's what many people expected. Instead, for a growing number of men, solitude isn't collapse, it's relief. And once a man experiences real relief, it becomes very hard to sell him chaos as love. So let's talk about what's actually going on. Not in slogans, not in gender war nonsense. In reality, in incentives, in systems, in behavior. Because this isn't men rejecting women. It's men withdrawing from a structure that no longer feels rational. And 2026 is the year you can see it clearly. Men aren't done because they can't date. They're opting out because the return on investment is collapsing. And when men sense the ROI is upside down, they don't riot. They leave, quietly. For decades, there has been a cultural belief that most people never questioned, that men need women more than women need men. Not biologically, not in some basic human way, but in the modern social sense. The belief was that men are incomplete without a partner, that male solitude is automatically a problem, that if a man is alone, he must be failing, that if he's single, something must be wrong with him. And that assumption created a quiet leverage, because if you believe a man can't tolerate being alone, then you believe he can be pressured. You believe he can be molded. You believe he can be moved by withdrawal. You believe loneliness will eventually force him into compliance. But here's the miscalculation. A lot of men have learned how to be alone without being lonely, and that changes everything. When you can sit in silence without feeling like you're starving, you stop, accepting bad deals out of fear. When you can build a full life without romantic validation, you stop negotiating your self-respect for companionship. When you realize peace is available, you stop paying premium prices for stress. This isn't about men becoming cold or broken. It's about men becoming selective. And selective men don't chase the way the culture expects. Let's get specific about what changed. Because men didn't wake up one morning and decide, I'm opting out. They got there the same way people always get there, through repetition, through pattern recognition, through enough experiences that teach the same lesson. For many men, the pattern looks like this. You enter dating with good intentions. You try to be respectful. You try to communicate. You try to show interest without being pushy. You try to be generous without being a doormat. You try to lead without controlling. You try to be calm without being detached. You try to be ambitious without being absent. And no matter how carefully you walk that tightrope, you keep running into the same reality. The standard keeps moving. If you pay, you're expected to keep paying, and then pay more, and then prove it publicly. If you don't pay, you're not masculine, not serious, cheap, low effort. If you text quickly, you're needy. If you text slowly, you're playing games. If you plan dates, you're expected to plan every date. If you ask her to contribute, you're counting pennies. If you want peace, you're boring. If you want excitement, you're immature. If you set boundaries, you're controlling. If you don't set boundaries, you're weak. If you try to build a stable relationship, you're moving too slow. If you move too fast, you're love bombing. And after enough of these contradictions, men start asking a simple adult question. What exactly is the win here? Because if every move can be criticized and every standard can be redefined after the fact, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance. And performances are exhausting when the audience is never satisfied. Now, here's the part a lot of people don't want to admit. For many men, the heaviest cost of modern dating isn't money, it's mental bandwidth. It's the constant emotional management, the constant calibration, the constant read the room work. It's the sense that you're not allowed to simply exist as a man in peace. You're being evaluated, not occasionally, constantly, not always with direct confrontation. Sometimes it's subtler than that. It's the sigh when you relax. It's the tension when you choose your own plans. It's the must be nice when you do something for yourself. It's the passive pressure to perform romance like a social media clip. It's the unspoken assumption that your time is flexible, but hers is sacred. It's the feeling that your hobbies are tolerated, not respected. It's the sense that your peace is always negotiable. And over time, men begin to see what that does to them. They're not angry, they're tired, they're not bitter, they're drained. And a drained man doesn't become more romantic. He becomes more quiet. He starts shrinking to avoid conflict. He stops sharing opinions. He stops initiating. He stops bringing energy home because energy gets punished instead of appreciated. That's how relationships die. Not with explosions, but with silence. And when a man finally leaves a dynamic like that, and he feels his nervous system return to baseline, something clicks. He realizes, I wasn't lonely. I was exhausted. And exhaustion is not cured by more dating. It's cured by removing what drains you. That's why so many men don't rush back after a breakup or divorce anymore. Not because they can't find someone, but because they finally tasted how quiet life can be. This is where the ROI conversation matters. ROI is not romance language, but it's how adults protect their lives. If you build a business, you evaluate returns. If you invest money, you evaluate risk. If you choose friendships, you evaluate trust. But when it comes to dating, men are often told to shut off that part of their brain. Don't overthink, just follow your heart. That sounds beautiful until the bill arrives. And in 2026, more men are looking at dating like a system with costs and outcomes. Not because they hate love, because they love their time. They love their focus. They love their peace. They love the life they've built. And they've learned that the wrong relationship doesn't just cost you money. It costs you momentum. It costs you mental health. It costs you sleep. It costs you discipline. It costs you the version of yourself that you worked hard to become. So when men say they're opting out, what they mean is, I'm not investing in a deal where the costs are guaranteed and the returns are uncertain. I'm not paying premium prices for average treatment. I'm not trading stability for drama. I'm not financing a lifestyle while being treated like a replaceable feature. I'm not overextending myself for someone who calls it the bare minimum. That is not hate. That is selection. Now let's talk about the machine that accelerated this shift: dating apps. Dating apps didn't just change how people meet, they changed how people value each other. When a relationship begins with a swipe, it begins with comparison. Even before you speak, you're in a ranking system, and ranking systems do something predictable to human behavior. They inflate expectations, they reduce patience, they create the illusion that better is always one swipe away. They reward quick judgments over slow discovery. They encourage people to treat connection like shopping. And shopping destroys gratitude because when you shop, you're not focused on what you have. You're focused on what else might be available. So men enter a system where they are compared instantly, evaluated superficially, and expected to prove serious intent early, while also being treated as disposable. And after enough cycles, men learn a brutal truth. In a marketplace mentality, loyalty is rare. Because loyalty requires the belief that what you have is enough. And apps train people to believe it never is. So men step back because they don't want to compete in a game where the rules are built to keep everyone swiping, not settling. Then social media adds fuel to it. Social media doesn't just show relationships, it sells a fantasy of relationships. A fantasy with constant excitement, constant gifts, constant travel, constant aesthetic, constant public proof. And if it's not posted, it doesn't count. That shifts courtship from private connection to public performance. And men are increasingly aware of what that demands. If you're dating someone who needs the relationship to impress her audience, you're not building a life together. You're feeding a brand. And a brand never stops needing content. So the baseline expectations creep up. Coffee used to be fine. Now it's low effort. Dinner used to be enough. Now it's minimum. A weekend trip used to be special. Now it's proof you're serious. And at some point, men say, this isn't love. This is subscription billing, and I'm canceling. Another major factor: the collapse of reciprocity. A healthy relationship is not 50-50 every day. Real life doesn't work like that, but it should feel mutual over time. There should be effort on both sides, consideration on both sides, sacrifice on both sides, respect on both sides. What men increasingly report is that modern dating often demands traditional responsibility from men while offering modern independence on the other side. Men are told to provide, protect, and lead, but not allowed to have standards, authority, or any expectation of loyalty without being labeled insecure. Men are expected to absorb emotional volatility, financial pressure, and social comparison while also being perfectly calm, perfectly patient, perfectly validating. And if they hesitate, they're shamed. Here's what men are realizing in 2026. A relationship cannot be built on one person's obligations and the other person's options. That is not partnership. That is leverage. And men are deciding they don't want to live under leverage. Now let's address the part nobody wants to admit, because it sounds too simple. Men are learning that being single can be better than being stressed. And once a man experiences that difference, he doesn't forget it. Think about what single life looks like for a man who does it right. It's not isolation, it's sovereignty. It's waking up without conflict in your stomach. It's deciding what your day looks like without negotiating it. It's spending your money with intention. It's building your body without distraction. It's focusing on work without being accused of neglect. It's sleeping without tension. It's going to the gym without a silent argument waiting at home. It's seeing friends without a guilt trip. It's having a clean environment that stays clean because you control it. It's knowing that if you have a quiet night, it's actually quiet. Men are not choosing solitude because they gave up. They're choosing it because it works. And the older you get, the more you value what works. This is why the "where did all the good men go?" question is the wrong question. A better question is, what did the environment become that made good men stop volunteering? Because men don't opt out when they feel respected. Men opt out when they feel used. Men don't disappear when relationships improve their lives. Men disappear when relationships become a second job with no pay. And the men who are leaving are often the men who are willing to build, the men who are willing to commit, the men who are willing to lead. They're not disappearing because they're immature. They're disappearing because they're learning. They're seeing patterns. They're protecting their futures. Now let's make this practical, because a speech without application is just noise. If you're a man watching this and you're feeling the pull toward opting out, here's what matters. Opting out is not drifting. Opting out is choosing. It's not hiding. It's building a better life so you're not forced into bad choices. Here's the difference between a man who opts out intelligently and a man who opts out because he's wounded. The wounded man isolates and spirals. The intelligent man builds structure. He strengthens his body. He strengthens his finances. He strengthens his friendships. He strengthens his mission. He upgrades his living space. He develops skills that compound. He learns to enjoy his own company without becoming antisocial. He becomes emotionally stable, not emotionally numb. And then, from that position, he can date if he wants to, but he's not dating from lack. He's dating from choice. That single shift changes everything, because the man who dates from choice cannot be manipulated by attention. He cannot be baited by flirtation. He cannot be threatened by withdrawal. He cannot be controlled with fear. He wants love, but he doesn't need it to breathe. And that is the core of male power in 2026. If you still want a relationship, here's the standard that protects you. A relationship should reduce friction in your life, not increase it. You should feel more focused, not more scattered. You should feel more respected, not more evaluated. You should feel more calm, not more anxious. You should feel like your partner adds peace, not pressure. That's the filter, not beauty, not chemistry, not the first month intensity, peace. Because chemistry can lie. Intensity can be temporary. But peace tells the truth. If you find a woman who respects your boundaries, appreciates your effort, contributes to the environment, and values your mission instead of competing with it, you'll recognize how rare that is, and you'll protect it. But if you don't find that, you don't have to settle. Because the point of opting out is not to become lonely. It's to stop paying for chaos. This brings us back to the title. Men are quietly opting out in 2026. Not loudly, not with protests, not with angry manifestos. Quietly. Because men don't need to announce their exit. They just stop showing up. They stop pursuing. They stop initiating. They stop performing. They stop volunteering their life force into systems that don't reward it. And when enough men do that, the culture notices, women notice, media notices. And the first reaction is always confusion, then blame, then shame tactics, then step up, then what happened to men? But the honest answer is simple. Men stepped back because peace became more valuable than approval. Men stepped back because the incentives became irrational. Men stepped back because the cost of being wrong became too high. Men stepped back because they realized life is better when you stop negotiating your self-respect. That's not rejection. That's withdrawal. And withdrawal is what happens when a man finally understands that his time is finite and his peace is priceless. Here's the final takeaway. If you're a man and you felt guilty for wanting quiet, for wanting simplicity, for wanting peace, drop that guilt. Peace is not laziness. Peace is not weakness. Peace is not avoidance. Peace is the foundation of strength. A man with peace thinks clearly. A man with peace builds consistently. A man with peace chooses wisely. And if a relationship threatens that peace, it's not love. It's a trade you'll regret. So build your life in a way where dating is optional. Companionship is welcome, but never required. Connection is appreciated, but never purchased with your sanity. That is the 2026 exit. Not anger, not hate, clarity. Now I want to hear from you. Have you felt this shift in your own life? Have you noticed that being single feels calmer than being in the wrong relationship? What was the moment you realized the deal wasn't balanced? Leave your experience in the comments, not to attack anyone, but to tell the truth. Because the more men speak clearly, the fewer men get pressured into contracts that cost them their peace.